This is Reuters Today coming up. Time to trim beards again in Timbuktu. And the wild thing who made our hearts sing dies aged 71. But first, UBS results out this morning show the bank made a net loss of 1.89 billion Swiss francs in the last quarter of 2012. That number's an improvement on the Reuters poll, which forecasts losses of 2 billion francs. The Q4 hit is largely down to a $1.5 billion fine for rigging LIBOR and other benchmark rates and charges from shedding 10,000 staff. UBS says it'll buy back 5 billion Swiss francs in senior debt in the coming weeks after a scale back on risky assets has dramatically reduced liquidity and funding needs. BP beats forecasts, a record performance from its refining division helping the British oil company, but profits still shrinking as the world's #3 oil major sold off assets to pay for its 2010 US Gulf oil spill. It says reshaping work will continue to affect its results this year. Toyota has raised its yearly profit forecast by over 10% on the back of strong US sales and a weak yen, a sign perhaps of a sustained U-turn for the world's biggest car maker. Yonggi Khan reports.
A weakening yen, one major boost for Toyota. Goldman Sachs sees a softer yen driving profits at Japanese car makers to record levels. The world's top car maker also relatively immune to a consumer boycott of Japanese car makers in China. Its market share there is well behind rivals Nissan and Honda. Toyota has been working to rebrand itself from a car maker known mostly for reliability and demonstrate more flair. The newest version of its crown could be a sign of changes to come. Toyota has brought back the creator of the Previa, one of its most divisive vehicles ever, as head of design. He's criticized the company for lacking character.
Rating agency shares taking a dive after the US launched the first lawsuit against S&P over mortgage bond ratings tied to the financial crisis. Shares of S&P parent McGraw-Hill plunged nearly 14%, the biggest one-day decline since the '87 stock market crash. Shares in main rival Moody's also sliding 10.7%. As yet, it's unclear why S&P is the focus of attention and not Moody's or Fitch. Plenty on the economic front to watch out for today. Peter Westerway, Chief European Economist, Vanguard Asset Management, joins me in the studio. Eurozone PMIs, more signs of bottoming out in Europe, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think the downturn we saw at the end of last year is starting to peter out. But I mean, I don't think we're going to see any spectacular growth yet. It's still going to be a long haul this year. There's just too many headwinds, fiscal policy, political uncertainty, and so on that's just holding things back.
When we look at asset classes, and of course the story has been, move out of the bonds, get into equities now. What are you telling your clients?
Well, we're telling clients certainly that bond yields over the next few years are probably going to have a lower return than they would have done in the past, obviously. But I think clients need to be careful about moving out of bonds wholesale. Remember why you have bonds in your portfolio. They're there as a hedge for the bad times. If you know for certain that things are going to be fine, then fine, pile into equities. But the trouble is, there's still these downside risks out there, so you need those hedges in case the bad times come back again.
Sure. What do you think? What do you make of the UK market right now? Retail sales out this morning didn't look too bad. MPC this week. Mark Carney speaks this week. There's a lot going on. What are you saying on the UK right now?
Well, I mean, I think once you see through all the kind of heat and dust about triple-dip recessions, I think the fundamental story is that things are pretty much flat in the UK, and we're going to get a very slow recovery over the next year, gradually getting back to growth next year. I mean, I think the currency's starting to depreciate. People are throwing up their hands in horror about that. That's actually really helpful for the UK. I think that'll be useful. Although it does mean that it's probably less likely that the MPC will pile in and do more asset purchases than perhaps they would. So pretty much the same. A few signs of light at the end of the tunnel, but nothing too spectacular.
And Mark Carney testifies Thursday. Great expectations?
I think there are great expectations. Whether those expectations will be realised is another matter. I mean, there's a lot of focus on this idea of him, of the idea of a money GDP target. I think people have thrown that up as if it's abandoning inflation targeting. I think the way you should think about a money GDP target is that it's a souped up inflation target, if you like, and perhaps it puts a little bit more weight on growth. But I don't think we're going to be throwing the inflation mandate out the window at all. So I think inflation will still stay under control, even under the Carney regime.
OK, Peter, many thanks. World news, leaders meet in Brussels today to discuss lasting security in Mali as national forces and French troops make rapid progress driving back Islamist rebels. In recently liberated Timbuktu, life is returning to normal as residents reject a strict version of Sharia law imposed by rebels. A hairdresser shaves beards, women bargain prices with male sellers at the market, and children play football. That is it for this morning. I'll leave you with our pick of the day. Reg Presley, lead singer of the 60s British rock band The Troggs, has died of lung cancer. The Troggs catapulted onto the rock and roll scene in 1966 with Wild Thing topping the US charts. Wet, Wet, Wet's cover of Presley's Love Is All Around in '94 stayed at #1 for 15 weeks. Presley used the royalties to fund his research into crop circles. I'm Axel Threlfall. This is Reuters.